what are our chances of convincing Bob to do Social Kick?
I feel like they're growing.
A little bit.
Yeah, it's only on the upward swing. You're not getting like less likely.
Welcome to Social Kick. I'm Brian Lundquist. We got a partial crew. John's in the clinic, but we got Luke Paddington joining us from Austin, Texas, in his new gear. Bob Bowman. What's going on, Bob? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Just trying to get started.
Yeah, well, I have to be honest. We're really only having you on to pick a bone with you about a quote from a talk you gave in 2016, and I'll share the quote here. I don't believe kicking is something that should be done slowly. Social kick. We don't do it, hate it. Bob, I need
That's still probably true. Sorry, I still feel that way. But I didn't say the podcast. I said the actual activity.
We have been lobbying swimmer after swimmer of yours.
And they'll be like, no, we never do it. That's not true. I've probably done a couple hundred of it in the last year to show that I have that club in my bag, but like not too much.
Oh, wisdom as you age. Well, speaking of club in the bag, have you hit some new links in Austin? Or are you going to miss some of the golf courses in Phoenix?
I have not yet. And I still have a place in Phoenix. I'm going back to see my grandkids every now and then, so I still get to hit those up. But no, I just haven't done anything but just try to do some work when I'm here. So maybe now, if we get a little more time, I can check that out.
Yeah, it seems like you've had a few things going on for the last.
A couple things have gone on since April. You may not have noticed, but a couple things happened.
Just a few things. Well, let's talk about a few of those things then. I was actually just out in Paris. I caught the last few days of swimming, and then
great.
And then I stayed through the rest of the games, and I was part of like a public marathon that they did on the marathon course.
Right,
really
you
cool.
did that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I did that race. I don't recommend running a marathon at 9 p.m. and then those last few miles hurt a little bit different at midnight.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun, and in my experience, Paris was really there was just so much energy around it. But you've been to lots of Olympic Games and experienced this one in a very different way, being part of the French contingent, of course, coaching Leon in his home country. Yeah. So just what was Paris like? Tell us about the games.
Well, it was amazing. First of all, I'm a huge Paris fan even before all this, right? I love France, and I think Paris is one of, if not the greatest city in the world, right? For a number of reasons. So there was that. The backdrop for everything was just amazing, right? All these venues are iconic venues and places around Paris. And I thought that the La Défense Arena was a great place for the swimming as well. What I hadn't really been a part of since maybe Sydney, when you went, and when Thorpe swam in Sydney, you had the same kind of energy. But when Leon or the French guys were swimming in Paris, there was just a really incredible energy in the venue that you just don't get very often. So that was amazing to just kind of be in and see how that worked out.
Yeah, the energy was wild in there for sure. And I mean, whether it was Flo or Clem or Leon and the giant heads and everybody yelling, Allez, Leon. I was telling the story a bit ago. A buddy of mine during Leon's 2IM, a buddy of mine was in the track stadium, and he said that the whole public inside the track stadium was looking at their phone, watching the stream of Leon's 2IM going, Allez, Leon, Allez, Leon, such that it disrupted the track meet.
I heard that. I heard that they actually delayed an event till it was over.
Yeah. So just like unbelievable, the influence that, not only swimming, but the Leon and things that the whole French team, were doing in the pool was having throughout Paris.
I got a question on that. Bob, my brother swam in Sydney, and he swam in the 200 free with Thorpe, not with Thorpe, but early on. And he remember saying he had been to a bunch of worlds beforehand and World University Games, World Champs. He says halfway through his 200 freestyle, it was like, oh crap, I'm the Olympics. I better start get going. He was so caught up with 20,000 people and the energy. Yeah. And I remember talking to Flo Manadou, and Flo's like, I'm really glad before the games that Leon's in ASU to be away from all that's going on in France and be controlled. what measures did you take with not just Leon, but the entire French staff crew to get them grounded and focused and just like, be buoyed by what's going on, but not be distracted? It's such a balance, right?
Well, with Leon, being in Arizona really made a huge difference. And then at the last little bit, he was in Texas, right? So just being in the States, I think was good for him to not be there all the time. And then he went over for his trials. And then he actually went back home to his home club in Toulouse. And I went and was there a couple of weeks with him there. And Hubie was there training with him that whole time. But they did a very good job there. The facility in Toulouse did a great job of kind of protecting practices and keeping people, kind of that sort of thing. So that was great. And also he lives really close to the pool. So it wasn't a lot, he could just go home and be, quiet. But I do think the French staff and really Jocko gets the credit for this. He planned it out. He's one of the best, if not one of the best, if not the best at kind of leading a national team into these meets. And he's done a great job creating an environment in the French team that's super positive, collaborative. So that was already in place since 2021 or 2022. But what they did was a relatively short camp, about 8 days, right, in Vichy. And Vichy is a great venue. The USA had our camp there in 2012 before London. And but even they went one step further. When we were there with USA, we stayed in this very nice hotel in the town of Vichy, and then we kind of went out to the pool and back. But they have now, it's like a miniature Colorado Springs Olympic Training Center right next to the pool in Vichy. And it's brand new, so it's quite nice, but it's super quiet, private, secluded. Right. And that's where the team spent the 8 days. And we're basically the only people there. There are a couple other small teams, but mainly just the swimming team. So the food was great. It was very relaxed. Vichy's a spa-like town. It's on the river, right? It's kind of nice, wooded, super nice. And then the pool was right there, which is a great facility. So I think from what I noticed, other than me, because I needed something to do all day and I would walk to 30 minutes into Vichy and hang out and walk back, everybody was just hanging out there. They were playing ping pong and video games and just kind of enjoying each other's company. It was only 8 days, so it didn't get so long that, they were bored. But I do think it was a very good job of kind of keeping them kind of quiet and away from the other stuff and allowing them to get ready for it. And then we drove up to Paris about 4 days before on the Tuesday, and then they started Saturday. So it was a good plan as far as that went. And by the time they got in the village, and there was obviously some hype around the French team in the village because, it wasn't so long until the meet started that they kind of got caught up in it. So I thought it was very good timing for everything. And just the demeanor of everybody was really about getting caught up in the excitement of it and using that to help the performances instead of just being worried about it. Yeah.
I've heard you talk a lot in talks about Michael and his visualization practices and how you guys worked on that to, really maximize performance and in the preparation. And I'm curious about what role that has played in sort of preparing for what the energy is like to swim in front of a raucous crowd at your home games. Cause I mean, I will preface this with one of the things that I would call it regret, but the Olympic trials for me personally as a swimmer, I never made the Olympic team, but I was on the short course worlds team and I swam internationally for Team USA. But when it came to trials, man, it was different. It hit different on my chest, the nerves, and it was nothing that I could have. I mean, I wish that I had been more intentional with preparing to be able to deep breathe and have some practices in place to be able to execute in the moment. And that manifested twice in my career, but never at any other meet ever. And so, the Olympics is different. And I imagine in this case for, home Olympics, it's different. So, are there some things tactically that you guys were working on to prepare for that beyond, the camp and relaxation, et cetera?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Leon, has worked for years with a mental coach in addition to me. I like to think I'm a mental coach, right? A lot of the time. But so he has that kind of visualization background and a strategy in place. Mm-hmm. He has a routine that he does before every race that is as much mental as it is physical, right? It's an activation kind of thing, but there's part of it where he does he sits in a yoga pose, basically, with his thumbs up like this and his fingers kind of done like that. And I always call it levitating. I'm like, well, go levitate before you swim, right? Because he's like sitting cross-legged, you feel like he's just going to come up. So and he does deep breathing and all those things. So he has that, that's a part of his process. And it's been very successful for him. And he used to have a big problem with nerves at the big meets when he was younger. And so that has really helped him be able to get in the right sort of state to perform at the World Championships and the Olympics and the NCAAs and all the other things that we do. My job is to try to create some situations in the training where he gets a taste of what that stress is like. It's a little bit different, but it's still there. So I think you kind of put him in situations in training sometimes where, maybe something unexpected comes up, or maybe, my favorite one, and he always comes through in these things. He's never not come through, but I would do stuff like at ASU one time, he did a set of 3100s and it was in the yard pool. And it was 1 on 110, 1 on 105, 1 on a minute. And on the 110s, he had to be, what did I say? Under 55. On the 105s, he had to be at, on the 110s, he had to be under a minute. On the 105s, under 55. And on the minutes, he had to have been under 50. And so he was going 58, 52, 48, right? So he just kept doing that, which is pretty good, right? I mean, it's good. And then we were done and we finished the set and everybody's felt good about it. And I was like, all right, 200 easy. And they thought practice was over. And as soon as they stop and see, in my world, everything is on the paper. That's practice. To them, if it's on the paper, that's it and nothing else.
Yeah.
So this one day I was like, well, we'll see. So they did the 200 easy and they were going to take it. I was like, no, keep your caps on.
Oh no, you're one of
I was
those.
like, on the top, go 100 faster than anything you did in the set. He went 46 flat.
Wow.
From a push, right? So, just kind of give them some stuff like that. Yeah. The other thing I try to do is orchestrate training during the camps, because we usually have an opportunity or two to do something where they have a public practice, So they had a public practice in Vichy about halfway through the camp. And I think somewhere 800 or 900 people, maybe up to 1,000 people were there. They turned people away, right? Who wanted to watch practice. And so when he walked out, everybody was doing the chant, It was kind of same kind of thing, but a very small scale. Right. And I suited him up. He did his meet warm up. So he practiced that, put his suit on, came out, and we did this kind of little quality thing in front of them. And I felt like that was really good and kind of focusing him in mentally about what was coming up and give him a little taste of it without it being kind of overwhelming. So we try to look for opportunities like that. When he swims at NCAAs, he's swimming all these events. They're intense. They mean something. I think that prepared him for it. So I think along the way, we're always trying to put swimmers in situations where they have stress on them, but there are situations where they can come through and succeed. And then if we see something that needs to change next time, we can make it if maybe they don't do as well. But in general, he's usually very good at those. What I've found with Leon is when we're doing the normal training, particularly in the lead up to a big meet, maybe 3 weeks, into it, he can be very average. And I'm not sure exactly what that is. I think part of it is he's holding back some because he's just kind of resting himself. I don't know. But then when we do the big practices like that, he always shows up. So it's sort of you kind of get to know a swimmer and what their tendencies are. But the kind of rehearsal part of it, I think is very important. And we'll also do it in other sets. Say we're just doing a set of something and there's 100 fast on the end. And I'll say, all right, do the last 100 of your 400 now, right? That's what this is. It's not just number 20 repeat or whatever it is. This is the last 100 of your 400 in the meet, and then try to go 57 or whatever it is. So I feel like we're always looking for opportunities like that.
I want to ask you, Bob, about what the environment. You mentioned 1,000 people at the close practice, and everybody's showing up before. This is before Leon won 4 gold. Yes, he was world champion. Yes, he was a world record holder. But you experienced Michael before Athens, before Michael won a single gold. He had world records in 2004, 2003. What was it about, you think, the French people, the media, the hype that just brought so much attention to this kid before he had achieved at the world stage? Had you an experience of Michael, perhaps in like 03 or what have you?
Yeah. Well, I think having broken the world record the summer before, that was a big deal. And he won 3 world championships. So he's one of their most high profile athletes already. Yeah. And actually, even before that, in 2022, when he won in Budapest and got close to Michael's record in the 400, and then he won the 2IM and was second in the 200 fly, he was already starting to get some attention in France. And I remember, being in 2023, I went over for his trials for the Worlds in the springtime. And I took a taxi and they were like, what do you do? I was like, well, I'm a swimming coach. And he was like, do you know Leon Marchand? I was like,
ever heard of him?
I was like, yeah, I've heard of him. I didn't even say that. I was like, yeah, I've heard of him. He's pretty good. He's like, and the guy's like, yeah, he's our hero. So, apparently even then he was a well-known. So I don't think it was a surprise at the level that we got at the Olympics that they were already he was on the radar at that point.
But Bob,
and Brian, I forgot I wanted to make a point for you about your trials. It's like, you are not alone in that, right? It's almost everyone is like that, because the trials, you have everything to lose. In the Olympics, you have everything to gain. So that's the issue there, is in the trials. And like, of all the meets we do, by far the American trials is my most difficult for me. And it's like, as much as I like getting people to go and do well there, there's always this kind of underlying sense of dread that goes into it. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, man, this could not go, because everyone has that sort of thing about the margins are small. The success is measured very narrowly there, right? Just being in the top 2 places or 4 or whatever it is. And so I feel like everyone at trials to some degree swims pretty uptight, regardless of whether you win or not. You're never really as free as you are swimming at the Olympics, when you can kind of just go for it and you're already there. So that was my, sorry, I forgot to chime in on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, but like, if that's kind of, for anybody who didn't have a great swim at the Olympics, you've got this, well, you're still an Olympian.
Exactly. You still got the stuff. You've had the experience, and that's a big, and that what's the Pierre de Coubertin thing? It's the thing is, taking part is the big part of the Olympics, right? That's the thing that matters, is you're there taking part. And, at the trials, the thing that matters to most people is you made the team or not, right? That's what it's for. Kind of designed like that, although it's become a wonderful event. I'm glad it's a bigger event.
Yeah.
Sorry, Luke, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I'm curious, like, if you go through so many different Olympics and and this time around, I don't know, like, critical mass wise, like how many athletes you've had at prior Olympics. I feel like there were a bunch in Beijing. You had that big group at Club Wolverine, but like, this has got to be among like the biggest like group of athletes you've had, and a lot of medal hauls. So like, I guess one is, we talked a lot about Leon, but like Hubie won gold. Regan had a great meet. You've had some other really good swims.
Yeah, some other athletes, pretty good swims.
And on top of that, I'm just curious, like, do you have some takeaways in general from Paris? Like, did you exceed the goals? What, like, are you walking away from Paris feeling like job done, or are there some things that were left on the table that you're like, okay, like, what's the takeaway? What's the feeling now?
Well, I'll preface it by saying, as coaches, we only really we have this bad habit of only focusing on the ones that didn't go well, right? Because you're always trying to correct things. But I would say we had about as good an Olympics as you can have. The odds are in the Olympics that, I don't know what the average is, but it's probably 25% of people even swim faster or achieve the goal, right? It's probably less win medals, a much smaller percentage. So from that standpoint, it's quite successful. I think we saw something from almost every athlete. There were a couple had a rough one. Chase had a rough prelim and didn't get in. So that was kind of, disappointing for all of us. But, in general, Drew Simone was able to have a good swim. She probably would like to have a better overall meet, but she did have some pretty solid swims. Regan had a great meet, and we would love for her to win some of those individuals. And I think she's the good thing about this meet for Regan was she performed well, right? Best time in 200 fly in the Olympic final, solid 2 back, solid 100 bag. She's up against really good competition. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? She gave a good effort. It's not like Regan choked. She showed up in every race. She swam credibly, and she learned. By the time we got to that last 100 bag, she made some significant progress, which I think she'll carry forward. So there's always that. And she got some gold medals in the relays. A very, very good meet. Paige, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's an amazing swim in the 800 final.
I got to see that one live. That was awesome. Yeah.
That was awesome. And, she kind of had a very clear goal of what she wanted to do in the Olympics. And she started off the meet in the 400, and I think she cost herself a little bit because she just overswam the first 200. But that's the only chance she had to win a medal in that event, was to be out faster. So we just decided to go for it. Had she kind of paced it, she might have gone 4:01.9, but still would have been 4th or 5th. That really wouldn't have mattered. So I have to credit her for doing that. 200 is pretty solid in the relay. And then she had a very good plan for the prelim of the 8 and the final of the 8 that she just executed to perfection. So, super proud of that. So I feel like overall, job done. It's the Olympics are not a high percentage activity. Yeah, they just aren't. So if you're anywhere close to a pretty good percentage, you're doing well.
You've had so much success. You just spelt out, and I've seen you celebrate. I've seen you celebrate from your heat sheet. Go, yes, this happened. Yeah. This, to jump in the sidelines of Herbie at ASU when you guys were cheering on. But then I saw you do a celebration I haven't seen in a long time. It's like a Dean Boxall after Leon race. What was it about you? Are you just getting older and softer on us? What happened in that race?
Well, I have tried to enjoy it a little more, as I go along. But, and also I think it was just part of the environment, right? It's like there's a lot of stress on that kid and me to get this stuff done. Right. So when it goes well, you just kind of just let go. And, I apologize to my mom, and everybody saw my language on TV after the 2 a.m. But you're kind of, you're in it, right? You're pretty intense about it. So yeah, I think that's it. I'm just trying to be in the moment a little bit more and realize that those times don't come up very often. So when you're there, go for it.
Good for you. You can't plan that. We had Aaron Shackle on, and we asked him about his celebration after his 400 free win in trials. He smacked the goggles. He says, I can't plan this. I'm not going to plan what's going to happen, but I believe you have to let it out. And swimming needs that. Swimming needs to see that raw humanity of the celebrations and the disappointments. Which is
I agree with that
on both sides. What words did you have? Flo Manadou talks about, again, James came up to him after 2012, the Olympic champion, and says, Flo, you're now a champion. Now, to be a champion, you got to continue being a champion. You got to keep winning. So Flo went on and achieved his goal in 2015 of world champion, European champion, world record holder, etc. And he said, at that point, I feel like I achieved. And he kept, and then he's like, well, how do I keep going from 2015 onwards? He didn't know how he kept going. And he was amazed at the careers of Michael, for instance, of how they kept motivating. And when I look at your career, Bob, of how you have continually picked up new challenges and gone and done that, what drives you? What keeps you going? You're about to embark on another massive shoes to fill, expectations. You talk about Leon's expectations. Dude, let's talk about
I got it.
Bob Bowman, what drives you to yourself to have these challenges?
It's funny you say that, because I had to do this orientation thing of new staff members at Texas this past week. And part of it is you go through the Athletic Hall of Fame, which is amazing. If you haven't seen it, if you're ever here, just kind of go through it. But they have a whole thing about Eddie Reese. And it's like 15 national championships, 44 conference championships, all this stuff, right? And the new golf coach who just came in, she came from University of Arizona, won a championship there, Laura Ianello. She and I were there, and she was reading this thing, and she was like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, no pressure, right? Just like, I was like, I got one. But no, I understand. I think for me, the reason I've taken on these challenges is because that's how you grow, right? And I went to ASU because Michael was retiring, around that time. And I wanted something that would push me. At the time I was turning 50, right? So I'm still pretty young. I love coaching and stuff, but I didn't just want to kind of keep doing the same thing in Baltimore. And I had always wanted to go back to college after Michigan and maybe do it right. And I did this time. Thanks, Michigan guys. I learned a lot. I used it at ASU. So that was an incredible challenge. And quite frankly, it took a lot longer than I thought it would, but it's incredibly satisfying to do that and bring them to that level and kind of build that program to a good level. And then when this came up, it was almost like I couldn't believe the timing, because it's wonderful timing for me to do something different, right? It was also wonderful timing for Herbie to take over ASU. And I always believed, since he came to us, that he was the one who was meant to be the long term at ASU. And we had even talked about him taking over and me just being a coach had I stayed at ASU, because I just strongly feel that's his job. He's a Sun Devil, and he's going to do an amazing job there. So that happened. I was able to transition to Texas, which is, it's kind of a dream for any coach. And I was thinking, wow, this thing comes up every 45 years. Maybe I ought to go for it. So honestly, I just want to kind of keep pushing myself as long as I can. I don't think I'm somebody who wants to retire, or I'm not a good vacationer. I'm a good worker. So this is like a good way to keep that going. Yeah.
So what are the things that you're still trying to learn, or how are you trying to develop as a coach? Are there some specifics that you have on your kind of mental checklist or to-do list from a career standpoint that are, or just like, I can't imagine being at a peak performer in any field, and you certainly are as a coach, without having some tactical goals. Yeah.
Well, I think the tactical goals at Texas are compete for a championship. I personally would like to be part of a women's championship. We didn't do that at ASU. Number of reasons, so I won't go into it, but so I think that's out there. The ability to kind of work with Carol and try to develop that program is pretty exciting. It's more collaborative, which I like. I think that the challenge here is, can you come in after somebody like Eddie and keep the standard of excellence going, but in a different way, right? We're totally different. It's going to be delivered in a different way. It's going to be, the training is relatively the same, a lot the same. If you look at Eddie's training and my training, it's the content of a lot of it is quite similar, but the way it's delivered and packaged is very different. Mine is super structured. Here's what you're going to do. You get 1 minute between sets. Eddie's like, let me tell you a cool story between these. It's like, right. I'm not like that. I'm not at all funny, so I can't do that. So I do think that will be interesting to see. And I just feel like it will be interesting to see how we can move these programs forward in an environment that is, quite frankly, ridiculously resourced, right? There's no real excuse here for not succeeding on any level, academically, athletically, as a person. There's every resource available to you. And we just want to make the best use of those as we can and see how far we can take this thing and see if we can keep up the championship legacy.
Yeah, but Bob, anybody can walk into the best kitchen in the world with the best equipment and the best ingredients and make the shittiest food. Or you can have the best music in the studio and you have all the best musicians and the orchestra, it sounds terrible, right? I'm going to give you an analogy. It's what you love. I'm a filmmaker. I always see myself as balancing my creative ideas and in my execution of building the film to make it work. And it works when it feels finally right, but it takes thousands of iterations of doing it. Tell me about how you go about crafting your product. Is it that that meticulous trial and error creativity, shit's not working, and then it feels right? I want to know more about you, Bob.
No, that's a very similar. I think that you go into it with a plan, right? You have an idea of what I'd like it to look like and feel like. Yeah. And then you start chipping it away at how we get there. And you'd be surprised that I'll go back to you and use ASU as my example, right? Yeah. At ASU, in the beginning, it was a couple things. Number one, establishing how we do things, right? And that's my definition of cultures, the Brene Brown definition. Culture is how we do things around here. Because people talk about it all the time, and I always ask them, and they can never tell me what it is. What is culture? Well, for me, it's how we do things. So at ASU, we started instituting how we did things. And quite frankly, we were doing them with swimmers that probably couldn't compete for an NCAA championship, but they were learning how to do things, and they were improving, and they were part of it. And I think probably the most satisfying thing about our journey at ASU is all those kids that were on the first couple of years of the team feel so strongly that they're part of the championship, and they were, indirectly, they kind of got it started. So that's where I start, is like, here are the building blocks of what we do, how we go about training, the expectations that we have, the attitude we bring to the work, all those things. And then you start filling in the pieces with maybe some more talented swimmers, which at Texas, we already have quite a few, right? So we're going to try to take them and start working with that. And I think ultimately what I want to get at Texas, which, is certainly different from ASU, but at ASU, by the last 2 or 3, actually about 3 years, but the last 2 for sure, the culture on the team, particularly the men's team, was that they were running the team, right? It was their team. They wanted the championship. They had a meeting by themselves every Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, and I never went in those, and talked about what the goals were and what the expectations were. And if there were things that were kind of off whack in the team, they corrected them.
Yep.
If there was a big thing, obviously I could help them out. But in general, what Herbie and I and Logan, we would have a 5-minute meeting every Monday morning. We call it the Monday meeting. So we just the guys would hang in the locker room. We'd go in there, and for 5 minutes before practice started, we'd say, hey, this is coming up this week. Great job on this last week. We need to do better on this. Every now and then there'd be an issue we'd address, but it would be literally about 5 minutes. Wow. And that was all we did with the team, except for coaching practices all week. They took care of all the rest. So that's what I want to get to. I want to get to a place where the environment, where everyone is bought in, it kind of self-corrects if something gets out of whack. And, that's the most powerful thing, because at the end of the day, when they get up on the blocks, it's them. It's not me. They have to know who they are and what they're about and be together. And that's the most powerful thing in sports. And I think that was the best part about our year this year at ASU. It was like, it's unstoppable when you're like that. You probably felt that at Auburn, right? You had that in some of those teams.
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah, that's the magic sauce, is when you've got that team chemistry where everybody just holds each other accountable, and you kind of fall into these natural roles too.
Yeah.
And
I'll give you, let me give you a couple examples, because these are worth noting, right? So, we had one Pac-12s, and we went to the next Pac-12s. And honestly, the year that we got second at NC2As, our whole focus was really on Pac-12s. I mean, we were thinking about NC2As, but Pac-12s we had never won. That was like the biggest thing ASU could do, right? Had ever done, right? Yeah. And then we ended up being good enough to be second. Well, the next year, it was clearly on winning the championship, right? Well, we go to Pac-12s, and we're swimming quite well. But I had guys going making the NC2A A cuts in the morning. And I'm talking about Cale Martyr, who people know now, but they didn't know then, Owen McDonald. Those guys would come up after prelims and say, hey, I wanted to make sure I swam fast enough in the morning here that I would score at NC2As, because I want to practice what we're going to do in the morning at NCAAs, because we have been selling that, right? The whole meet is morning at NCAAs, right? We've been doing that all year. And then I noticed at Pac-12s, we had black caps and we had white caps. And everybody was wearing the black caps in the morning and the white caps at night. And they had just decided to do it. And I was like, well, what's going on? He's like, prelims are our finals. We're in the black caps in the morning. And then they did that at NCAAs as well. And that's just one of those examples of how the culture was built around what the mission was, and everybody was bought into it. And at the end of the day, people like Cale Martyr were the ones who decided the championship. So, yeah.
You ever find yourself needing to course correct a bit, get everybody else in line?
Yeah, for sure.
What's that look like for Bob?
College men's team? Yeah, come on. Yeah, that we have that. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you said
it's usually honestly, it's usually a conversation with me and the captains about what's going on to find out, right? And they're saying, hey, we need some help with this. And then hopefully it's me and the people involved just kind of quietly doing it. Every now it's me and the whole team kind of getting their attention about, hey, we're kind of off track here. You know what I mean? So I can do that still. I used to do it all the time when I was younger, but now I just, maybe once or twice a season, everybody gets together and I get to give them a little sermon about, hey, what are we really trying to do? Don't do this, do this, those kind of things. So that's probably the course correction part of it. But, when the culture's good, you don't really have to do that very much. It's just more like just to make sure everybody's, on their toes a little bit. Yeah.
What's the balance you like, Bob, between being in that office and being on deck? Because the more you have to build new programs, the more time you got to spend in that office as opposed to being on the deck. What's your balance you prefer?
That is so true. I prefer the deck. That's my thing, right? I love the coaching. And what I really love is my favorite thing in the world to do is write a workout. I just love it. I spend quite a bit of time doing it. So I guess that's office time. And I like to spend a lot of time thinking about it and planning it and writing it. And then if you do that, then it's so easy to coach and it usually flows. And, you've done that. I don't ever kind of go out and just make it up as I go because I'm not very good at that. But,
so that takes,
the name of the game here is recruiting, right?
Yeah.
That's literally what we do. And I kind of go back, I saw this thing, and I talked to the team at ASU about it. We'll talk to the team at Texas about it. And it is, everything we do is about recruiting. Everything, this podcast, everything we do is about recruiting, right? How we operate, what we do, how we perform in these meets, the image we project. And that's not just me. That's everybody in this whole hallway of offices and the people that work with us and everybody that a recruit's going to come in contact with. It's the brand of Texas. It's, in collegiate swimming or any collegiate sport at the top level, you're doing it all the time. You're thinking about it all the time. And even though we're kind of thankfully in a recruiting shutdown this week, we're still thinking about it. Who's out there? What are we trying to do? How can we get them here? So I think the balance for me is how do you make sure we're actually coaching the people who are on the team, right?
Yeah.
Because, instead of just focusing on the new people we're bringing in, but knowing that that's the critical part of this equation. So I think sometimes we get a little carried away in the recruiting. It's like, hey, we're going to have to take a break and actually make sure we're coaching these guys because one day those people will be these guys. And they understand it. I usually even talk to them about it a little bit, but I think that's the balance, and it can sometimes be tricky. In the fall, you get kind of crazy about recruiting, right? Because that's when a lot of these kids are making their decisions and they're coming in and they're doing all this. And, I understand the importance of it because, it only takes a Leon Marchand, a Hubert Kos, and a Ilya Kharun, and your team's pretty good, right? You know what I mean? That's at ASU. That is what put us into the top 3 conversation, having those guys. So you have to get those guys, and there's a lot of competition for them. So yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah.
This is probably a bigger question, but you talk about a balance, and Bob, you also have a huge balance for your pro team. You've got equal numbers of pro swimmers with you, right? So you got to balance that. And this is the big question. Do you think that that's the future? That's how American swimming continues, is, relying on the NCAA system, but also building up these, not training centers around the world, these pro teams, and having that balance, right? What's your opinion on having these, these groups around the country of these pros, and of course, NCAA swimming keep growing? Yeah,
well, I think it's important. And I think that is probably what the future is going to look like in some standpoint. I mean, we don't know how all this stuff's going to shake out. I think there's symbiotic, right? I only have pros on our team who I think benefit the college team, right? If they don't give some value back to what we're doing, I don't keep them or bring them in, right? So I feel like that group of pros that we had at ASU, it was instrumental in helping those other guys get better. Just because they were in practice, they saw what the standard was, they pushed each other, they had high goals, so they were kind of pulling them along, to think bigger. So I think it's vital to the success of both groups. I don't think the pros, in Baltimore, I did the pros basically by themselves. It was not nearly as good as when I do them as part of the college team.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as good. In Michigan, we kind of did both. I did separate sometimes and together. And when they were together, it was much better in the summers, we were training together. So I feel like the more that we have that dynamic, the better swimming will be and the more the sport will advance.
Yep.
Particularly, and it's using resources. We have these resources at Texas. We should use them for the greater good as well as just for the Texas good, because it ultimately ends up being the same thing.
Yeah, totally. Bob, we've talked to a few of your pro athletes, and then really just talking to pro athletes in general, what you find is that, swimming is not always a science as much as you try to perfect the workouts and everything. Bodies change, people change over time, and then your needs change. Even your event schedule may change and your interests may change. So like, it's as much of an art as it is a science to understanding how to like have your best performance every year. And so it seems like those that have had these really long, successful careers take full ownership of their performance. They know what they need. And that's really seems to be a differentiating factor versus those that are just kind of along for the ride.
Yeah.
And yet, several of the people that we've talked to that are a part of, your program seem to say, Bob's got the plan, you're the one with the master plan. And so I'm just curious about how that, and I think there's maybe a time for that for athletes who are less mature or earlier in their career, that they may need to learn from, someone with a lot more experience, what it takes to put together a plan. And so I'm just curious, like, how do you work with professionals who may have some independence and ownership and know what their needs are? How does that kind of influence the plan, and how does it work for you, given that so many of them are like, Bob's got the plan, there's a lot of trust, and there's a division of responsibilities?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I think we end up where you're right. In the early stages, I have the plan, right? Here's what we do. And they do it, and they do pretty well, right? And they grow and they get, and older and more mature. And a lot of them are reticent to take on the ownership of it at that point. I'm trying to, I get a lot of like, what do you feel like you need here? Well, whatever you think.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I'm not you. I am not you. So I actually push them to make decisions about things. I think some of the big strides that Regan has made is, I think when she first came, she was completely reliant on me to tell her what to do. And she wanted that. She's like, you tell me what to do, I will do it. And she still has that, mindset of like, if this is what we're going to do, I'll do it the best I can. But now she's learning about how she can take ownership of it, make adjustments to it. You don't always, the answer to everything is not always white hot intensity 110% of the time. It's like every now and then you have to take a breath. It's okay to take 4 weeks off. You can do these things. So I feel like it's a constant education process, and it's something that I have gotten better at because, as coaches, we like to be in control of it because we kind of study it, and, it's nice to be able to do these things. But at the end of the day, they are the ones that are swimming. They're the ones that know themselves better. And even Leon, he'll tell me some things sometimes, and I'll put that in take it into account. He won't be just like, or I'll say, hey, how did you feel like that worked? He's like, well, not really sure. I felt like I got too much out of it. Maybe this would be better. I'm like, okay, and we'll just go with that. So I think it's definitely more collaborative the further along they get. And then you have cases where, like Simone, when she came back to us after her break, right? And she was really struggling. What she needed was a definite plan. And it was, that was where I was probably at my best, because I'm really good at saying, all right, we're going to go from point A to point B to point C. And I know our goal is to be at point Z down there, but we're trying, we're going to just one step along the way, take it one step at a time. And I do think there are times in their careers where they really need that structure. But then by the end, of this year, Simone's like very good about verbalizing what she feels like would be better. But she does it in a real collaborative way. She's not like, I know what I need. She's like, what do you think about this? I feel like I do better when this happens. And then you can just fold all that into the plan. Right. So it's more collaborative for sure the further along they go.
Yeah, and are you in that space now with like, say, not to name, but like Carson, for example, somebody who's probably wanted a little better results than he got at the games, but still, it's like in a very good place in his career. But like lots of other pros at Texas, are you in that process now of going, especially maybe some of the ones that are more new to you, like getting to know them, or will that come here pretty soon as you just workouts?
I had a meeting with Carson the second day I was on the job, I think. Long one, just talking about, and I didn't even do anything with him this summer, right? But we just kind of talked about, Texas and him and his career. And yeah, we're at that point. I do think, they're going to come into this system that is going to be my system. Yeah. I think they're up for it. I think they're excited about a change. So that will be the first part of it. So here it is. How do you react to this kind of thing? And then we'll kind of work together on the more individual things. But I think for them, it's just kind of a fresh start. And for me, it's a fresh start. So we just approach it kind of open-minded. But it's like everything in the beginning. I mean, we're swimming an hour a day. So it's like, we're just starting real small. So everybody can kind of fit into that. And then it sort of grows. So I feel like as we move along, we'll try to individualize it for those guys so that they get what they need, but also so that the system can help them get what they need. Right.
Yeah. I want to talk about your system a bit. So when I swam, I know your system, your mantra was do the work. And to me, as a swimmer, I have this preconceived notion. If I swam for Bob Bowman, as I finish the set, you're telling me the next one, I'm leaving on the top to do the next set. I have very little time on the wall. I take my paddles off and I'm putting on my snorkel. I'm going right away. And to me, do the work for swimming for you, I'm just guessing, was just like constant motion and like a lot of active recovery and then hard work and putting in there. What do you think? But and I do know when I did that, I improved. I was a 50-100 guy. When I did the work and I put in the last 200, I dropped. However, what about? But I'm much more attracted to the Cam McAvoy styles now. Of course, later in my career, with does mean focus on yourself, less yardage. What's your style and your opinion on that style of like adapting to the swimmer and the active, the recovery, the rest, the sprinting that's going on with the Prouds and the Manadus now? Well,
well, I think it's all good. Yeah, I don't have a lot of 50 freestylers in my group, but Trevor Maida's right down the hallway, right a couple lanes down. He can take care of that, right? So in the program, it's accounted for. And I do think you have to have a certain theme, like your group can't do everything, right? And my group is a middle distance type group, right? It's a 200, 400 IM, 200 of strokes. They go down to 100. If you have somebody like Leon who's very good underwater, or Hubie, they do good 100 frees, right? Leon's the third fastest yard 100 freestyle guy, but it was all underwater, maybe not necessarily off of the sprinting program. And I don't think he would do well in a sprinting program, to be honest. But so I think you just kind of, number one, know what you're about, and then you attract the people who do that. So most of the pros that swim for me do that. And pros that swim for other people swam for Herbie, right? They needed that other kind of thing. So I feel like everything is valuable. There's a number of different ways to do this. And I've actually added things to my program, taken things away from my program. There are things I used to do that I would never do now. There are things that I want to try that I haven't done yet, So I feel like I'm always evolving too. That's part of that, thing that you talked about, the challenges. If you want to be a better coach, you just have to keep evolving, right? And I would say the volume's probably less than it used to be for me. Definitely is less than it used to be for me, but the results are better. But that doesn't mean that just reducing the volume made the results better. It's probably the quality of their work is higher. All those things. And it's also the time, when somebody's 13 and 14, they need a certain type of work. And when they're 22, they need a different type of work if they're going to keep improving. So that's the fascinating puzzle about putting these programs together. Yeah.
And define doing the work for you then. Doing the work is more than just the work in the pool. Doing the work is
Oh no, it's all that's an attitude. Yeah, that was that hashtag, do your work, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny how this came along. I'll tell you the impetus for that. There was a period of time where our pool was shut down at ASU for a whole summer to get a new deck. And we trained at other pools, but a large part of the process for my group was being at Colorado Springs. And we were there for like 2 months.
Whoa.
And it was me and my assistant, Logan Herka, for most of it. And other coaches would kind of come and go. But Logan and I were there for the whole thing. And we were working out, and we would go in the mornings, and he and I would lift and just do some stuff. And there was this one day, and I was like, I am so tired right now. I don't know what I'm going to do today. And Logan said, well, I'm just going to go do my work.
Nice.
And I was like, all right, I'm going to do my work too. So, damn it, I'm just going to go do the work. So it kind of turned into this thing. Then we'd be saying to each other, I'm just going to do my work. Or it would be like, it would come up like we lost a recruit. Like, damn it, this kid went to wherever. And I'd be just like, well, let's just do our work. So we just always kind of kept back to that. So that's what it meant at ASU. And it ultimately came into this thing where I would have a meeting at the beginning of the year, and I would say this. I was like, here's what you need to do. Yeah. When you are on top of the world and can't feel better and you're swimming as fast as you can, just do your work. Yeah. When you're not motivated and you don't know what to do and you just don't feel like anything's going to go right for you, do your work. There's no situation where you just stay with it. And it's kind of back to this Zen thing of like, what do you do the day before enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. What do you do the day after enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. So that's what it means to me. It's just this foundation of everything we do is in the daily routine and the consistency, and these sort of outlier experiences that come from that. You still go back to that. They never take you away. There you go. There you go. Right. Perfect. But that's what do your work means. So I just kept putting that on there to kind of let them know, because, that would be our answer to a lot of things. Like, oh, well, I just don't think my freestyle's right. I was like, just do your work. We'll take care of it. You know what I mean? Just do your work.
All right. What kind of work are you doing in the weight room, Bob?
Me personally, I'm doing
don't tell me you're an elliptical guy.
No. I just lift. I swim for my aerobic. I actually swim. I know it's hard to believe, but I do swim. Oh. No, I'm just doing like basic lifting. I got into a thing. I had our weight coach at ASU. He was giving me a program. So I was starting kind of some Olympic lifting, but for me, it's kind of the basics, bench, lats, squats, just kind of that stuff.
Trying to get ready for spring break.
Just trying to keep my bones intact for the long haul, right? Try to manage my body weight a little bit, try to do something. So it's good.
Yeah.
I do like doing it.
Yeah. Wait, what can you do in the pool right now? What can you give me an example?
I can do 2,000 easy.
2,000 easy. What if you needed, hey, your team suits up. When's the last time you suited up? Can you suit up and go 100 fly?
I've never suited up in my life. We only wore paper. When I swam, we wore paper suits. I actually would like to try one. I don't think there's a suit big enough to fit me, but maybe if I get down a little bit, I could do it. But, I just like to, it's funny. I started swimming about, I don't know, now it's probably been about 4 years, and I took 30 years off. Like, I don't think I swam since college. So it's probably like, 25 or 30 years, but I hurt my knee and I couldn't do anything. So we were at this pool and I just started swimming, and, just loved it. I love the way that I feel when I'm swimming. There's nothing better for your brain. I don't do it I don't come in with a practice for myself. I just start swimming and I usually just get into some pattern and do it. Like, I don't have any preconceived notion about what I'm going to do. And it's usually about 2,000. It could be 3,000 sometimes if I'm feeling super motivated. But I just love to do it. And now in Austin, I've been swimming like at Barton Springs, this outdoor pool, 70 degrees. It's amazing. Yeah. So, it's just a great thing. And it also, I think it's gotten me back to thinking more about my technique and the kids' techniques. And I'll try drills and just do stuff like that. So I think it's just a great thing.
Yeah, I always find it funny when coaches don't get in the water, because I wonder how you're able to like relate as much. I mean, I understand that they're like two totally separate things, but And then also getting in the water, I've described it for me as like, it's the thing that makes me feel the most like me.
Yeah,
And, for someone who's been in the sport for as long as you have and coming from a swimming background, I can imagine that like, it's just kind of centering.
It's great. And, I've taken it to this crazy extreme. Like I go and swim in the pool at the world championships. Like I've totally gotten over my shame about what I look like in a bathing suit or whatever, because it just feels so good. Right. And I don't really care if people see me swimming like, oh my God, what is that? It's just, I like to do it. And I just try to keep it going as much as I can. So at these pro swims and stuff, you'll usually find me in between sessions swimming somewhere.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. All right. We just got a few rapids for you. We'll
Yeah.
let you go.
Okay.
What's the hardest race in swimming?
400 IM.
Olympic gold or world record?
Oh, world record.
Hell yeah. What could you go in 100 freestyle right now? All out.
Yards?
Whatever you want.
Probably, I don't know, 55.
Hey,
that would be really good. That would be really good.
That's pretty good.
I think I might. I think I could definitely go a minute. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Should the 50 strokes be added to the Olympics?
Yes. How about that?
All right. Are there any other events that you would add?
No, God, we have plenty of events. Let's just get those done and call it. There's plenty of events.
How far away are we from seeing a 3:59 4 a.m.?
Not that far. You were pretty close in Paris.
Yeah.
Right. Just there were some circumstances there.
All right. Last one. What's the best Eddie story that you've heard?
Oh my God. There's so many Eddie stories. I'll tell you an Eddie story that always sticks with me. Eddie was my roommate for 2 Olympics, which I was just like, in 2004, I was like this kid, right? Wow. And he was just like this icon. So he was my roommate. And we're in Athens, and we were in these dorms in which every part of the dorm was marble, like the floors, the walls, like everything. And I am one of these people that I have to sleep cold, right? It has to be cold for me to sleep. So I turned the air down in that room as low as it would get. And they had given us like a blanket, like a little sheet and like a towel is like what the blanket was. So anyway, we're go to bed. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I was freezing. Have you ever been so cold that you couldn't even get out under the covers to turn the air back up? It was kind of like that. But after a while, I was like, I just can't deal with this. So I got up and I tiptoed, and it was super dark. And I was very quiet because the thermostat was right over Eddie's bed. And I was up, and right as I turned it down, I heard this voice say, I hope you're freezing your ass off. And I looked down, and Eddie is in a hoodie, and he has every towel that he has over him and every piece of clothing that was not like in his suitcase, like piled on top of him. And I was like, you could have just turned the air up. It was pretty funny, but I'll never forget that. That's the kind of person he is. He would never want to like put me out, to try to save himself. So I always remember that.
Oh my God. That's awesome. We'll end it there. Bob, thanks for hanging out. Always good to talk to you. We'll look forward to seeing you on deck the next time we get a chance. Excited to see what you do, but congrats on all the things that you've earned too. So
thank you.
I hope you give yourself some time to reflect, appreciate, celebrate. Yeah. So good on you.
I'll do it. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. That's it for this episode of Social Kick. We'll see you next time. Hey everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you're enjoying Social Kick, tell your friends about it, and be sure to tell us what you liked by leaving a comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Social Kick, and you can find all of our content on our website at thesocialkick.com.